We're now being joined by Mr. Laolu Akande, who is the former presidential aide and also the host of Channels Television's Inside Sources. Mr. Akande, it's good to see you this morning.
Good morning.
Well, this is the matter that we're looking at this morning. It's the first one amongst many others that we intend to discuss. Initially, when we started this week, the issue of a strike by Lupeng was hanging over our heads, and a lot of us were having palpitations. But clearly, other people also have other concerns. I mean, when you look at what has happened to the people of Oworonshoki, for instance, you know, Lupeng strike will be the least of their worries. Absolutely. It's going to be about where they're going to lay their heads, especially for those who have spent money trying to put up some shelter for them to at least stay away from the elements. So I do not know what your thoughts are with regards to how it is that governments generally go about urban planning, town planning, and making sure that, you know, housing for everyone is something that is a priority.
Yeah. So I listened to the Lagos State government official trying to lay out, you know, the regulations and how it is that many of those buildings are improper. And you know, you can't, I mean, we must assume that, you know, since this is the position of the Lagos State government, they know what they're saying in terms of whether there are approvals or not with legal issues. You got to concede that they know what they're talking about. What I think, two things. The first thing is that, look, there has to be a middle ground in this matter. And then the second point is that, where was the government, you know, when all these developments were coming up and they were thriving and people settled there and people made a way of life and people, you know, where was, is there, and I'm asking because I've not really delved into this, is there a bit of negligence on the part of government that allows this kind of stuff? And this kind of pattern is normal. You know, you have a place people are not taken care of and they have to sort themselves out. So they get to a place and they start to live there and they build houses there improperly, you know. And then government wakes up in the middle of some point and say that, no, that's not proper. And we want to make a better use of that. What is the responsibility of government in that kind of situation? Why did we allow it? And then how come we don't have a comprehensive plan to take care of our people? Finally, now that you have demolished their houses, where are you sending them to? So government must find a middle of the road approach.
It's a responsibility of government,
It is ultimately the responsibility of government to
clearly,
welfare of the people.
when we see this demolitions most times, not the ones done by developers, maybe. Right. I'm talking about when you see people who clearly are vulnerable. When their homes are demolished, they have nowhere else to go. It is, sometimes you have to ask if government does have a responsibility to them. That question always pops up on my mind. Sometimes government will say, where were they before? Maybe they should go back to where they're coming from.
You see, two things must be at the heart of governance: justice and mercy, compassion. So, yes, government can say that, no, you did this wrong, you did that wrong. But considering the fact that these are nearly vulnerable people, these are not, you know, for the most part, you know, these are people that are at the lower, you know, end of the rung, you know, or the ladder. I mean, these are people that need help. So, yes, you know, government has permitted them to be there for a long time, which I think it borders on negligence on the part of government. But now, government must not just tell us that, look, we have to bring these things, places down without telling us how they will be taken care of. And I hope that is what the traditional rulers are trying to engage with the government officials. We must find a middle-of-the-road approach that borders on compassion and social justice. Now, those two things must be at the heart of how this matter is resolved. And we have to call out the governor of Lagos State, who people say clearly, you know, has a connection with the people. I mean, you see him go out, you know, into the train, talk to the people, try to find out how good they are doing. You must, Governor Sanwo-Olu, find a middle-of-the-road approach in this matter. We can't resolve this matter by government banging the table and say that you guys have broken the law. You guys have done what you got to do. You've just demolished the stuff. But what is going to happen to these guys? Government has an obligation, a moral obligation, a social contract obligation to resolve the problem and settle them in a way that they can find acceptable. And that's where this should end.
Well, let's take a look at other matters now that have also come up. I mean, I don't know how you felt with that Nupeng strike. Well, yeah, well, I think it actually did start a strike. Thankfully, we did not feel the effects before it was called off.
Yeah.
But the matter that was at hand as to whether or not, you know, members workers of a particular company could unionize, of the Dangote refinery could unionize. Initially, it was looking like there was a deadlock, but eventually, the DSS, did you have a problem with that? The DSS helping to reach an agreement at the end of the day?
Well, I mean, as long as the outcome is good, I have no problem, you know. And the DG of the DSS seems to be somebody that, you know, quite a very, you know... Proactive, thinking kind of guy. So if they solve the problem, hey, we are happy. If DSS turns around to be the one solving problems, we cheer for it, you know. But what I think happened in this case is that on the side of Dangote, you are dealing with people who are afraid of monopoly. On the side of the Nupeng, you are dealing with a unionism that requires a little bit more of democratic, considerations. You know, you can't force people to belong to a union, while on the other hand, they have a right to belong to a union. So we need to free up the space, not only to ensure that Mr. Dangote, no, we're not going to let you be a monopolist, but at the same time, the worker space has to be freed up. You can't compel people to be in your union, and the people who want to be in the union should have a right to choose the union that they want to belong to.
Yeah, but in this instance, what we understand was that the terms and conditions of service with the refinery was that you cannot be a part of a union.
Well, so that's against the laws. That's against the labor laws. You can't have a factory as big as Dangote refinery and say that people cannot be part of a union. It's too big. You can't do that. You can't do that. That's you know. So it's one of the things that Mr. Dangote himself will have to understand that it's not even good for his own reputation to try to preclude and constrain the rights of people working in his factory. He can't do that.
Well, eventually that was resolved, and thankfully we have products in the stations, because that's where it concerns you and I, and that could actually degenerate into something that could be a security threat. Perhaps that's why we saw the intervention of the DSS. Now, we've said the DSS DG was proactive, but hey, some people say, do you think a little arm twisting was involved?
You know, well, there are proper situations where you should do arm twisting. If it's going to be in the hand, on the side of the people. Yes, that's part of where government have force. The problem that we have for the most part is that when you do this arm twisting, it's for the benefit of the elite class. They are taking care of themselves. Yes, if you have to do a little bit of arm twisting for the people, then it's not entirely...
it's not out of place.
Yeah.
Western doctor strike. We're currently in Abuja here. FCT resident doctors have been complaining for a while.
Yeah.
And this week, they decided to down tools. They told Nigerians and everyone who gets to listen that they're going to down tools for 7 days straight.
As a warning.
As a warning. It could become indefinite. And our correspondents, you know, went out to town to, you know, see the state of things at some of government hospitals. And it was really heartbreaking to just look at the faces of people who had gone there. Those hospitals were crowded. On Monday, when that strike started, a lot of people had no inkling what was going to happen. So they had gone to the hospital hoping to get treatment. Yeah. And lo and behold, they were told that a strike action had started. And it was just, you could see the disappointment on their faces, the fact that they had to go home without getting treatment. Now, on the one hand, someone will say, we can't blame the doctors. They are at their wits' end, it would seem, because, I mean, when you speak with them, they had loads of letters that they could present to journalists to say, look, we've been writing. Right. It doesn't seem like anyone is listening. At the other side, we haven't quite heard much. I don't know whether you have heard. I haven't heard much from the government in the FCT as to how they intend to resolve the agitations of this resident medical personnel. And we are understanding that it could expand. We're hearing NARD could, you know, it could be a national strike. So while we're hearing that some state governments are being proactive with, you know, looking at welfare, it doesn't appear that this is percolating all around.
Yeah, the problem, Markwe, is that, you know, for me, one of the things that defines a progressive society, you know, is how human capital development issues are managed. And I'm not happy to say that we have continuously failed and failed and failed and failed for the most part. You know, I know that, you know, we do have reform-minded people at the federal level trying to sort this matter, both in education and in health. But it's such a very tough struggle, because normally you will wonder that we're not supposed to even have strikes in the hospitals. It's supposed to be an essential service, okay? But like you said, these doctors are giving such a long notice, and you still have a system where, and I've spoken to this before, we have a broken system in the civil service, in the public service. It's a broken system, where communication is the last thing that people care about. Otherwise, why will you have the doctors are telling us that for months they have not been communicated with? They don't have any kind of feedback. Why do you have a Ministry of Labor at the federal level and you can't have, even if it's a weekly communication? I remember that when we were in the villa, you know, when Professor Oshibajo was acting president, you know, and we were dealing with some of the issues with the strike, what he did was to say that you must have a desk officer who will be communicating regularly with the workers who had an issue there. Regularly. There must be somebody that says that, okay, we have received this, your letter, you know, we are going to set up a meeting at this time, this is the feedback, this is what we are struggling with, we don't have the money now. Somebody must be talking, even when you don't have that round table, you know. But something as simple as this, Mark, where you will find out that it's not happening, which is the reason why these doctors are saying that, look, we have done our best. I want to appeal to them that, look, matters of health are too sensitive. You know, anybody can get sick anytime. And how do you convince the person that needs the services in the hospital and is not going to get it because of a strike? It can even make somebody run crazy. That what kind of a system is this? So we must call on the government, and this is the conclusion of the matter, that this is urgent. The way we manage our health, the way we manage our education, the way we manage human capital development issues, that is what speaks about what has happened to us as a people. And we keep struggling. And these strikes are the reflection of the fact that we are struggling. We have a lot of big, I mean, look at what is happening in FCT. Everybody is impressed that, you know, all these roads they are fixing happening in FCT. Everybody is impressed that, you know, all these roads they are fixing it, they are turning the things around. Infrastructure, that's good. But that doesn't speak to our soul. It is what happens in our hospitals, what happens in our schools. That is what tells the kind of human beings that we have become.
Well, I know that Ayo certainly will have more follow-ups on that, and we'll also want to take you up on other issues. So it's over to you now, Ayo.
Well, thank you, Markwe. I actually would love to follow up on that, you know, because when you raise the issue of communication, Mr. Akande, first thing that comes to my mind is, do we have a system of communication? Because what I know is Ministry of Information, 37 of them, at the federal level and at the state level. We don't have a Ministry of Communication. The one that we have that is called Ministry of Communication is communication with an S, and that speaks more to technology than it speaks to what you are talking about. So if we don't have a system of communicating with the people, then perhaps that's where the problem is.
I mean, certainly, Hayo, you know, and we have talked about this, you know, quite a number of times, that even the idea of information is, I mean, you give information and then you walk away. Communication is lecture. We haven't fixed it. So that is the legitimate problem. But I'm not even talking about internal communication in government, in the public service. It's still a struggle. That is why, you know, you have situations where, you know, at times it's the doctors or other kinds of workers, and they're saying that, look, they have given government a month, they have given government 2 months, and there's no response. So that tells you that even in terms of internal communication, it is still such a big ordeal, and it ought not to be. It ought not to be. All that has to be done is to identify and give people responsibility to be in constant. That is why we have the Ministry of Labor. It's an entire ministry at the federal level. It's an entire, that's what they do. It's labor disputes. It's to take care of stuff like this.
Labor is just one.
The fact that you are having people working, doctors in this case, saying that, look, nobody communicated with us. We shouldn't be having that kind of a situation. We should be having a situation where they say that, okay, they spoke with us and we don't agree with what they said. Okay, we know that at least there's a conversation going on. There's an ongoing interaction. But right now, from what we get from the doctors, there doesn't seem to be an ongoing interaction. It seems that there is an interaction when they raise the level of the temperature. They say they were going to strike. Then everybody says, oh, okay, what's going on here? And then it comes down again, and then everybody goes to sleep. And then the doctors wake up about 1 month and say that this thing has not moved. No, we shouldn't have that kind of a situation. We should have an ongoing interactive model where the people in the Ministry of Labor are constantly, regularly, weekly trying to cross the T's and dot the I's. That is the reason why we have a Ministry of Labor. And so we need to call, and we have 2 ministers in that ministry. They need to rise up and make sure that while they are there as ministers, they can take care of this basic interaction. You'll be surprised, Ayo, that kind of ongoing interaction, if it is made efficient, it will solve a lot. It may not solve the entire problem, but the fact that the people have a listening here and be very helpful.
Mr. Akande, perhaps one should just rest it on the fact that, and which is, you know, speaks to what you said earlier about the acting president at the time, Vice President Osinbajo, saying that that activity needs to be kick-started. But it's not just in the Ministry of Labor. It's practically every ministry. There is a power outage. No one is talking to you. You have to literally be, what's the word now? Scavenging for information. To even know what is happening in the first place. If no one is talking, of course, people reserve the right to think the way they like. Another issue that, you know, borders on, that borders on interest is the NNPCL. You're not unaware that the EFCC, I like the way one media house puts it, that the former GMD of NNPCL has honored the invitation of the EFCC. Of course, others put it more gruesomely, but so there's that conversation around the $7.2 billion refinery fund. Now, we have heard all kinds of things about that, the refineries over time. And then this current GMD is also talking about the refineries, wondering whether or not they're ever going to take off, and then what we had, and then what we have now, and all of that. So is this going anywhere, or is just one of those talk shops?
Well, okay, so there are 2 things that you've raised. You've raised Mr. Mele Kyari's preparedness to honor the invitation of AFCC, and then the issue of the refineries. So let's take the issue of the refineries first. I think we failed as a nation after the Obasanjo administration said that, look, we're going to sell off this thing. And actually the process of sale was on. And then the Yar'Adua government came in and reversed it. You know, so that is one major societal failure that we are still dealing with. But I think the second thing, which is a good thing, is that I think Ojulari seems to have come to the point that, okay, look, if we don't want to sell this stuff, we need to bring people that run refineries, the experts, to come and do some kind of partnership with us, you know, so that these things just don't become scraps that we are still spending money on. So I think that we should give Ojulari the benefit of the doubt and let us see what he can make happen in that way. It seems to be a fresh thinking, you know. So let's see how that goes. Now, back to the issue of Mr. Mele Kyari and the and the investigations. I think that this must go beyond just the EFCC. I am of the opinion that Mr. President has to take a keener interest in resolving what has become a culture of corruption, deep-seated corruption in the oil and gas sector, particularly in the NNPC. Yeah, and I know that the EFCC chairman has come out and said that if we see what is going on, that it is mind-boggling. I think we need a presidential level special probe. Yes, working with the EFCC and the other anti-corruption agencies, but the problem in NNPC is not the kind of problem that you manage the way that we are managing it. It just shows that we are not ready. You know, so Mr. Olukayede will tell us that, there is a serious problem here. How do we solve it? It's just an alarm. There must be a systematic approach that requires presidential initiative. It's such a big deal. The amount of money that we are talking about is humongous. So I haven't seen any kind of concerted effort to solve the problem of corruption in NNPC. We are doing window dressing so far. And for as long as we continue to do the window dressing, well, we're just going to be going on in the same vicious cycle. And God will help us so that we can get a break. This is what I think.
Well, our national pledge ends with "So help me God." So let's just hope that that comes to play at some point. You know, maybe also in "So help me God" is what some parents are talking about when they say that the JAMB age limit policy is unconstitutional and should be suspended. Of course, you know, at the point when the JAMB and the Minister of Education proposed that if you are writing JAMB, your cutoff mark should be, the least should be 320. And the parents are saying that that's arbitrary, unfair, and a breach of children's rights to education. I'm a little confused because what do you make of that, first of all?
Well, my view is that when we're talking about education in a world that is driven more by the knowledge economy, we are not supposed to be playing around merit. We have to re-establish the prominence of merit when it comes to education. We cannot play around the issue of merit. This is, the world has become a place that is driven entirely by knowledge, technology, innovation. For me, there is no space for all kinds of our quota games and look, except we don't want to match up with what is happening globally. So I support the Minister of Education in his effort to re-establish the place of merit in our education. And the second thing that has happened to us that we have seen in education is that we have a situation where parents, let's even forget about the people that do the CBT centers, you know, the computer-based centers, you know, who are also involved in all kind of shady deals, which should be dealt with. But the one that breaks my heart is when you have parents actively getting engaged, involved in how their wards can cheat in exams. The active collusion of parents in examination malpractice. That is a national emergency. It requires us to talk to ourselves as a people. That how did we find ourselves? How did we get here? Because, again, look at what is happening globally. And we are playing games with education. It shows that we don't even understand what is happening in the world. So we must support the reforms that is going on in education, trying to bring back the seriousness of merit. We must support that if at all we want to be part of the game at the global stage.
You know, that issue you raised about a national conversation as to how did we get here. I listened to Mr. J.K. Pele, talk about how examination malpractice is now becoming normal. Is the norm now. In fact, you might look like the exception if you're not involved. If you're not involved, it is really, really mind-boggling. And I think that I don't know who will be saddled with that responsibility of hosting such a conversation to say, are we serious as a people? Well, is this the sort of future we really want to bequeath to our children?
Absolutely. Well, that's the job of the National Orientation Agency, I must say that Mr. Lanre Zaolilu has been quite innovative. But that is something that he has to be thinking about. We need to be talking to ourselves. When you have parents, arranging how their wards can cheat, how somebody else, two people can go in on the same identity, sit in there and exam all. One is the fraudulent one, that is doing the exam. The real person is just sitting down there. And then you have this collusion, and parents
are aware.
So help us God.
Amen. Well, Mr. Laolu Akande, we have to thank you so much.
Thank you so much
for coming on the program this morning. Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us. Mr. Laolu Akande is a former presidential aide and also the producer and presenter of Channel Television's Inside Sources. Thank you once more.